Okay, so our next paper will be Poverty Spreads in Deposit Markets. So I'm going to just introduce the paper and let the presenter take over.
Thanks a lot for having the paper in the program, and I'm really looking forward to your thoughts about the paper. So I go by Orko. I'm from NUS, which is National University of Singapore, and it's co-authored with my friend Emilio, who is currently at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. And the paper is talking about understanding whether deposit rates varies across the income distribution. So the primary motivation of this question comes from the consumer price side of it. We know that there has been enough research that has talked about different rates of inflation that people face across the income distribution. So relatively poorer people are exposed to higher inflation rate, while richer people are exposed to relatively lower inflation rate, probably because more product innovations are going on at the right tail of the distribution than the lower tail, and thereby there is this saying that it is quite expensive to be poor. Now that's there in the consumer sides of the market. However, there is little attention that has been focused to try and understand whether rates vary or deposit rates vary across income distribution, and deposit being one of the primary vehicles of financial entry by most Americans, and it is the critical first point of entry in the financial system. So it matters to understand whether deposit rate varies by income distribution. So what we ask, particularly in this paper, is do households with relatively lower income receive relatively lower deposit rate compared to the wealthy individuals? And the answer that we find is yes, otherwise we wouldn't have written the paper to start with. And then we try and understand what is driving these differences. Is it driven by a traditional banking competition that people have talked about, that there exists banking competition across banks in the deposit market, or is it some other mechanism that is going on? And that is what we'll try and understand as we move ahead. So basically what we find in the paper is that there is a systematic evidence of a spread along income distribution in the deposit rates. So moving from the bottom to the top decile of the income increases deposit rate by roughly 22 basis points, which is almost like 50% of the median deposit rate in our sample. So this finding holds within bank, within county, and there's also higher product category that individuals across the higher income distribution are exposed to than individuals lower in the income distribution. What we find, what is going on, is that there is strong evidence of participation channel. That is, the finding that we find, that is the deposit rates vary across income distribution, is not highly correlated with the banking market structure or the competition that is happening across bank on the deposit product. However, what we find is that the participation of individual in the non-deposit market is kind of driving the results, in the sense that wealthy individuals tend to participate more in, say, equivalent money markets, equivalent stock markets, and they have this higher propensity to move their money out of deposit to this other product markets, and that is what is driving the banks to give them higher deposit rates so that they do not move the money out of that deposit market to this other product market. So that is what is driving the results in this paper, if I can't go into much detail because of lack of time. And the way that we show it is we have the breakdowns of income across income that is coming through salary, income that is coming through capital gains, income that is coming through interest rate, and various other incomes. And we do find that it's only the income that is coming through capital gains or through interest rate, which is kind of the income that is generated from participation in some asset market, is what is driving these differences. And we'll do some form of causal identity. So far what we have said is kind of a reduced form relationship. We'll show some causality. If I do not find time, that's fine. That's mostly to say that we are kind of showing some degree of causal interpretation as well, that higher income will lead to higher. So let me talk briefly about the empirical setting. So the data that we use is rather simple. We use rate watch data that has APYs at the branch product level. It has very detailed descriptions of the product that we use. The sample period is from 2004 to 20. And for the income, we use IRS data on average income at the zip code level, which is the lowest level of granularity that we use. And this zip code year level is the level of aggregation that we do for our empirical study. And then we break down income based on what I had already mentioned: salaries, capital gains, interest, and so on. And if I have to put the paper in a snapshot, this is what the paper finds. So in the left panel, so both is by and large same. We are trying to remove some form of unobserved variation. So in the x-axis, we have zip code income deciles, and in the y-axis, we had the APYs, or the rates that they receive. So if you move across income deciles, you do see a very a linear relationship of the deposit rate. So as and when you are increasing in income, you are tending to receive a higher deposit rate on the money that you put. So the graph over here is like a bin scatter. For every bin of decile of income, you have 1 point that is the average of income and the average of the deposit rate. We plot that, and we do find a upward sloping line, which is again saying that as income increases, one is ending up getting a higher deposit rate. And this is, again, I don't want to bore you with all the details of the table. So what this does is it's again showing the same graph in a more structured regression table, and each of these columns are making the identification more and more granular. So you are tightening the specification so to remove any sort of unobservable things going on. So let me pick one of this column, say column number 3. We have year fixed effects, which is removing any form of year specific variations. We have zip code fixed effect. We have product fixed effect. So we are controlling for each and every of these things. And then we are saying that as income increases, there is a higher deposit rate that one is getting, or a household is getting. And if you remember, I had said that the number is 22 basis points high. So if you take any of these coefficients, say 0.128, a number like this would be interpreted as 100% increase in income will lead to 12 basis points increase in the deposit rate. Going from the first to the 10th decile leads to 180% increase in income. So that translates to something around 22 basis points increase in the APY. So now we wanted to show the difference between, say, the number of sub-products, that is whether they have access to more products. As income increases, there is more access to more number of products. More number of products also leads to higher deposit rate, because some of these products are such products that ends up giving higher rates. Minimum subscription size also goes up. So if you have a subscription size of a higher bucket, probably the deposit rates are higher. The maturity is also longer in many of these products. And then, so these are kind of, the previous table was showing that you have access to more products, or more products are available. Now, if you look at a more granular definitions of product, so within that granular definition of product, also you do see as and when income increases, even within product, there is a different deposit rate that one is ending up getting. Again, all of these fixed effects, I don't want to explain. It is tightening the specification as much as possible so that the variation only comes through income, and you're explaining the deposit rate that is only generated through difference in income, and not through different products, different banks, and so on and so forth. Our findings are robust to a bunch of other stuff, so I'm not going to that. Now, the next thing that we wanted to show is the result, just an outcome of banking market competition that people have talked about. So we kind of group areas that have a higher HHI, which is a measure of bank competition or bank market structure. And we do see that areas that are competitive versus non-competitive both have similar effect, saying that bank market structure is probably not the main driving force of the results that we're observing, or the traditional way of understanding bank competition is not the thing that is driving our differential deposits rate. Now, the next thing that I would want to talk about is what is actually driving it. And what I had mentioned is that participation in the non-deposit market is probably driving the results that we're observing. And we kind of do it, and to give you an overview of how we say that this is what is going on, we group income based on one that is coming through participation versus the others. And then we look at participation and deposit flows, whether places that have higher participation, whether deposits in those regions are volatile or not. And that is what we see, that places where individuals tend to participate more in non-deposit market, deposits tend to be more volatile with the movement of the market. As stock market tend to give more return, one moves the deposit out to other money market accounts and so on. And this again is a similar way of trying an understanding. Now we just look at income that is generated through capital gains or through interest income, and we do find again similar relationship of capital gains and interest rate part of the income. That is what is driving the differential deposit rates across the income distribution, and I'll show you it's not driven by the salaries part of the income. So if you focus on these columns, so the first one is the net capital growth to total income, which is the part that we think is the income that is coming from participating in non-deposit market. Probably interest rate to income is also similar, but salaries has nothing to do with income that is generated from the non-deposit market. And if we put all of these subcomponents of income in a regression, we do see only the parts that we think are driving participation, or only those part of income that is coming from participating in non-deposit market are the ones that is driving the differential deposit rates across this income distribution. So this what we do is now we group total income deciles or total income buckets, and within the total income bucket we do see when there is difference in the income that is generated from the net capital gains, that ends up having a higher deposit rate. Now, as a thought experiment, think of two individuals both earning similar total income. One individual have higher proportion coming from net capital gains, another individual lesser proportion coming from net capital gains. The one that has higher proportion coming of net capital gains are the ones that are ending up having a higher deposit rate. All right. So this is just to show that, as participation changes, deposits are more volatile. I'm kind of running out of time, so I'll just speed up a bit more. And this again is showing that, when market participations are high, there is deposit growth, like branch deposit growth goes out in places that have higher participation. So when market returns are high, branch deposit growth goes down when in places that have higher participation in non-deposit market. For lack of time, I'll skip the identification bit, but very briefly we use capital gains taxes. When capital gains taxes increases, the top highest income people have lesser incentive to participate, and we do see that spreads goes down. So this is one way of saying that we use this as an instrumental variable, and this helps us to give some causal interpretation to the results that we have. I'll skip these things, and then the final thing that I wanted to show in this paper is participation and deposit market power. So Rajesh has helped me a bit on this by explaining what deposit market beta are. That is how your interest rate are sensitive to market movement. We do see that participation of individuals in non-deposit market is a way of market power for banks. So if you have a clientele that participates more, your market power tends to be less. If there is a clientele that participates less, the market power tends to be low, and then thereby there is similar deposit market beta accordingly. So that is a different way of generating market power, quite beyond the HHI number that we have talked about, or the traditional way of understanding bank market power. And with that, I'll just conclude. We document there is a differential deposit rates across income distribution, and this is driven by participation in stock markets or other markets. That is what is giving market power to banks to extract higher or give higher deposit rate to a certain group of households compared to the other group of households. And with that, I'll hand over to the next Shingwan. Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to the comments and questions.